Good evening, Mobile. We all know Benjamin Watson for his outstanding performance on the football field. He played for the University of Georgia, the New Orleans Saints, and the New England Patriots. What you may not know about Ben is that he is accomplishing things off the field even greater than winning a Super Bowl, which he did his rookie season. He is the author of 2 books and is executive producer of a pro-life documentary that will be released in theaters nationwide this fall. He is the father of 7 children and has been married to his wife, Kirsten, for 15 years. I had the opportunity to meet Ben on an elevator in the Superdome a few years ago and thanked him for his pro-life stance. I wanted to share with him about the Women's Resource Center, but did not have a chance that night. What Ben did not know is I was praying on that elevator that he would one day speak to you at this event in Mobile, Alabama. Little did I know that I would have the honor of introducing him to you. At this time, would you all join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Benjamin Watson?
Yeah, that was not too long ago. I can't believe I'm here, actually, but that just shows how God works all things together. God has plans when we think He doesn't. He knows the future when we don't. He orchestrates people in different places at different times to accomplish His purposes, and all we have to do is do our job. All we got to do is trust and go along with it. I am the father of 7 children. I always like to start off with that, but he already said it, but I'm going to say it again, 7 kids. 7 kids. There's 7 days of the week. I mean, I got a kid for every day of the week. And when you put together all the different lines of communication, I said, look, here, this is what we're going to do. Everybody has 1 day of the week to talk. If it's not your day, save it, write it down, and tell us when we can hear what you're saying. My kids are great, though. We have 4 boys and 3 girls. Started off with 2 girls. Men here, you know what that's like. You start off with 2 girls, and everybody's asking you, are you going to try for a boy? Oh, yeah, I'm trying for a boy, but it's not happening. I'm happy, but now I'm happy I got my girls because my boys will not help out the way the girls do. So we started off with 2 girls, then we had 2 boys. We had Grace and Naomi, then Isaiah and Judah. We waited a couple years, and then we had Eden, which she's my baby girl, and for those of you that have baby girls, you know that the baby girl can have whatever she wants. My wife says, you're spoiling her. I said, I know, that's the point. Then we were at 5 kids, and 5 is a cool, edgy number. I like 5 kids, and I thought we were done. But after time, and talking with my wife, we got on the same page and said, we're going to go for an even number 6. My wife likes even numbers. She wants everybody to have somebody to ride with on the roller coasters. Wants everybody to have a friend. And so we said, we're on the same page. We're going to go for number 6. And tragically, we had 2 miscarriages after that, something that many of you have experienced probably. And we learned that there is a whole community of people, maybe some of you, who have experienced that tragedy, and we never quite know how to deal with it. It's always that hidden thing that you don't know you're in the club until you have one, and then you're able to speak with each other and comfort one another. So we had 2 miscarriages, and we said, Lord, we're going to try one more time, and then after that, our family is set at 5, and we'll be grateful for that. Well, as God would have it, in His sense of humor, I'm walking into the ultrasound office after my wife got pregnant with what we thought was our 6th child. And I'm pretty good at reading ultrasounds at this point. I've been in there a lot. 5 kids. I know. I tell the technician what's going on before she tells me. I know what that is. That's check. Make sure you write that down. We got to watch that. So I'm sitting there looking at the ultrasound screen, and something just doesn't look quite right. And we were a little worried because we had the 2 miscarriages, like I said. So my wife leans over. She asked the lady, "Do you see any babies? Do you see a baby?" She wanted to make sure there was still a baby there. And the lady said, actually, I see 2 babies. At that point, 250 pounds almost hit the ground, almost passed. I walked out of the room, down the hall. I had to reset. Came back in there. My mother happened to be there. She's shouting. She took her shoes off. She's jumping up and down shouting because we got twins. So we had identical twin boys that were born last April 24th, Asher and Levi, and they crawl around looking just like each other. It's the strangest thing ever. I still can't get over. We'll sit there at night sometimes, look at each other and say, we have twins. This is strange. This is really strange. So the family's well. They are right now in Miami, Florida. We're actually in the middle of union meetings for the National Football League Players Association. For those of you that don't know, don't care, we have a union like everybody else. We work like everybody else. We have grievances like everybody else, and so we have our annual meetings, and they're in Miami this year. So we bring the whole family down. They go to the beach while we sit in meetings all day. And so they're there. I came in here tonight to be with you all, and I'm heading back tonight if any of y'all have a private jet. But tomorrow, if nobody has a private jet, wink, wink, I'll be heading back down to Miami to be with them. But they send you greetings, and honestly, coming here to Mobile is kind of, I haven't spent much time here. The most time I spent here was actually at the Senior Bowl in 2004. That was my first experience with Mobile hospitality, honestly. And I say that seriously because being someone who, had never been to the state of Alabama, never been to the city, they treated us very well. And my other experience with Mobile is driving through on I-10, going to the beach, which I know you see a lot of people speeding through here going to the beach. I'm sorry if I was one of them and I ran you off the road, but it's a long trip from New Orleans to Watercolor. I'm sorry. I've been, over the last year or so, I've been around the country and seen a lot of women's resource centers type places. And I can tell you that you are not alone. You are not alone in this fight. There are people that are like-minded all around the country who are gathering together at banquets like this to support each other. And the really amazing thing that I've seen is that there's people from all walks of life. I mean, even in this room, we have people who are lawyers, people who are judges. I had the honor of sitting next to the mayor. We have people who are mothers and fathers, people who are students, people who are using their abilities for good. They're using the expertise that God has given them for this cause. And that's what it's all about. Being an athlete and being someone who's played football for most of my life, we all have different talents. In the New England Patriots, I wish I could throw the football. But we got a guy named Tom Brady. He's pretty good at it. So they don't need me to throw the football most of the time. But we all work together for a common goal. And that's the beautiful thing, not only about the body of Christ, but specifically when it comes to standing for life. There are people who have certain abilities, and they're able to work together for the common good. But we need you all to do your jobs. Even tonight as we go through this program, there will be some of you who are involved directly with this organization, and there's going to be some of you who are on the periphery, and some of you who just got invited to have some great food. But whatever the reason you being here is not by accident. It was for a purpose. And we need you to do what God is calling you to do so that lives will be saved, so that families will be saved, so that this stain of abortion is removed from our country. Right now, and sometimes I just like to kind of get and set the stage, but on any given day in the United States, 2,300 human lives are lost. 2,300 innocent lives are lost on any given day. 61% are surgically dismembered, and another 39% die from some sort of medical exposure. These are real lives. Sometimes we hear statistics and we don't realize these are real lives made in the image of God. Sometimes we kind of gloss over, and it takes us getting hit in the face with the reality of this to encourage us that we need to keep on going and keep on fighting. About 50% of all pregnancies in the U.S. are unplanned, and 40% of those end in abortion. I had the great privilege last week of actually being in Washington, D.C. At the Supreme Court, where a case was heard from Louisiana. Louisiana State Senator Katrina Jackson brought forth a case that made it all the way to the Supreme Court about admitting privileges to hospitals for abortion providers. And I sat there in awe, really, seeing this all-star cast of judges, and couldn't believe that I was actually there. And I walk outside of the Supreme Court, And literally split in front of the court, there was a pro-life side and a pro-choice side. And they were yelling, people were screaming. It was really, really intense. People were really upset about what was going on in the court. I walked around to the side of the court, and there were 3 women who had t-shirts on that indicated that they were pro-choice, and I engaged with them. And I asked them some simple questions. They didn't know who I was for or whatever. I just asked them, talked to them just as human beings. Started asking them about their stance, and they told me that they believe, some of the things that we always hear. I said, if there was one thing you could tell somebody that was pro-life, if there was one thing that could kind of change your mind about your stance, what would it be? Well, 2 of the women said nothing could change their mind. But there was one woman who said, if the people that are pro-life wouldn't live in such hypocrisy. They say they care about the babies, but they don't care about the babies once they're born. Now, immediately I wanted to jump in and say that's not true, but I wanted to hear her sentiment. My point to you is, in our angst and our drive to save the unborn, don't forget about those who don't think like us. Don't forget about their humanity. Don't forget about the fact that the Spirit of God can change their lives too. Don't forget about the fact that love and care and engagement can change them. Don't give up on them. It's easy to do when there's name calling back and forth. But what I realized there was, you know what? There are people on the other side who aren't really on the other side because they're humans as well. And they need to be brought back in. They need to feel loved. They need to feel like they're worth it. The United States is one of 7 countries that allows elective abortion after 20 weeks. One of 7 countries. Anybody guess what the other ones are? Canada, China, Netherlands, North Korea, Singapore, and Vietnam. We got some great company, don't we? When you think about our country and all the great that we've done, and the power that we are around the world, and the good that's done around the world because of people on this land, we still have this ugly stain that we're dealing with that will not end until people like yourselves continue the work you're doing and step up and try to change it. A lot of times people ask me why I'm involved in this mission. And it's kind of a weird question because they kind of think that I woke up one day and was like, hey, I'm going to care about babies and moms. I was like, really? Seriously? But they look at me and say, man, you're a football player. Why do you really care about this stuff? And growing up, it wasn't a pro-life or pro-choice. It was simply a justice issue. It was an issue about caring about people. It's not something that we carry alongside of us like a suitcase. It's something about who we are as people who have been forgiven and people who have been redeemed. We should care about justice. So the first reason why I'm involved and why many of you are involved is because I'm a believer, because I'm a Christian. The Bible says in Psalm 139, it says, "For you formed my inward parts. You wove me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made," the psalmist says. When you think about those words and you think about what's going on inside of the womb, you understand the importance of what we're doing here tonight. The second reason why I'm involved is because of this idea of personhood. And what I realized sitting there in the Supreme Court is that personhood is bigger than simple humanity. Personhood is about the legal ramifications of protection and who and when someone becomes a person. We believe someone becomes a person, obviously, when the 23 and the 23 come together, something that's happened 7 times, but one of them split in my family. We believe that's when the person, but legally, what is personhood? Daniel Becker, who wrote a book named Personhood, he said, "The recognition by our culture and our government that each individual human life has unalienable right to life from its earliest biological beginning. This right to life extends to natural death, regardless of one's disability, gender, race, or dependency, or manner of conception." The reason why I'm involved, because I believe personhood should begin at the moment that 23 and 23 come together. For those of you that aren't doctors, that's 23 chromosomes and 23 other chromosomes. The third reason, and I mentioned this before, why I believe this is an important issue, is because I'm a dad. I'm a father. My wife and I were married in 2005 after my rookie year in New England. Any Patriot fans? Any Patriot fans? Any Patriot fans? A couple. Okay, all right. I'm going to get to the other teams. Just hold on. And we were there for 6 years and ended up having our first child in 2009. And immediately, for those of you that have children, you know that moment when the baby comes out, it's like, whoa. The responsibility that you feel and also the great joy that you feel. Scripture says in Psalm 127 that children are a heritage from the Lord. They're like arrows in the hand of a warrior. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. I got 7 arrows. And I'm shooting them. And the whole point, the whole picture there is that as parents, as fathers especially, we have the ability to sharpen those arrows. A dull arrow doesn't do very much. I'm not a hunter, many of you are. But I do know that a sharp arrow pierces deep. How do we sharpen those arrows? Well, we do that in the home by teaching them, by admonishing them, by disciplining them, by loving them. As a father, that's why I care about this issue, because we have young children who are in the womb that can be arrows for this culture. They can be arrows that are shot to change the course of history. My kids will go places that I will never see. They will. Your kids are going to be your calling card to places that you weren't blessed to go to. They will travel further than you. They will travel faster than you. They will meet more people than probably you ever did. For those of you who weren't born in this social media age, they can already reach more people than you met in your life. Your kids can tweet something, and in one tweet, they've talked to more people than you met your entire 60 years. I know this because my dad tells me this all the time. But right now, 1 out of 3 children is without their biological father. About 24 million or so kids in the United States are without their father. And studies show us that kids who grow up without a father in a home are more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to live in poverty, more likely to be pregnant as teenagers, more likely to drop out of high school. And there are some fathers who are there, but your presence is there, but you're abusive. You mistreat them. And so this issue of life is important to me because as a dad, I see how important it is for men to stand and be the men God has called them to be. And I also see what happens when that doesn't happen. There's been so many conversations that I have from time to time. I've been in the locker room since whenever, high school, the 90s. And I've seen so many young men come through. And most recently, there was a conversation I had with a young man. He didn't have a dad. He never saw it demonstrated. He was about to have a kid. And a simple conversation encouraging him that, you know what, you have what it takes. You have the opportunity to change the course of generations. So whether you saw it or not growing up, men, you have an opportunity to be the dads that you desire to be. That's why this issue of life is important to me. Lastly, this issue of life is important to me because I'm a citizen of this country. I can see how this affects everything else. Abortion is condemnable for the same reasons as chattel slavery. It's condemnable for the same reasons as the Holocaust. It's condemnable for the same reasons as the removal of indigenous people from their land. Anytime we take one class of citizens or one class of persons and relegate them to an underclass, that's an injustice. And as people in the United States, we need to see the ramifications. We've seen the ramifications of when we've treated people differently, when we've treated people as less than human. And we continue to correct those things. Well, this is the next frontier, I believe. It's not a new frontier, but this is the next frontier that we have to stay engaged in. This term of non-persons. You know, I'm doing a film, as was mentioned before, and the name of the film is called Divided Hearts of America. And really the idea for the film kind of came last year, maybe this time, when there was the Reproductive Health Act that was passed in New York. and we saw the comments from the governor of Virginia. And then on the flip side, we saw here, actually in the state of Alabama, much more conservative heartbeat bill. We saw one in the state of Georgia. We saw Illinois. We see all these states ramping up for some sort of fight. And I thought, we are at a fever pitch when it comes to this issue. It's like both sides are digging in, and nobody wants to give in. It's like there's no engagement. There's a lot of yelling and screaming. So throughout the film, I interview about 30 to 40 different voices when it comes to the issue of abortion. So I went on Capitol Hill and talked to legislators. I talked to doctors. I talked to some people who actually ran abortion clinics. I wanted to hear the other side. I spoke with the woman who actually sponsored the Reproductive Health Act. I spoke with people that were in the faith-based community. I spoke to all different type of people in academia. And what was really amazing was that the common thread between them was this idea of where does life begin? If you could tell us where life begins, it seemed that even those who would call themselves pro-abortion or pro-choice would be able to consider this a life. But as we've seen with so many other issues in our country, in our past, when we have certain people as non-persons, we will pay the consequences. Bringing it home to Alabama, here's a couple statistics that you probably already know. But 17 children are killed in Alabama every day. 17 innocent children are killed in Alabama every day. There's about 6,000 or so abortions per year. That's why Women's Resource Center is important, because they are on the front lines. I didn't have a chance to actually go to the facility today, but I've been to several, and I've heard the services that they provide. Many of you know them, you're involved with them, but the ultrasounds, the counseling, the education, the providing for the needs of mothers after the birth, which is what a lot of people don't realize. There are several centers that walk with moms and dads 1, 2, 3 years after they give birth. There are centers that help give children up for adoption. They give these women a way out. They are addressing this head on. My family has a kind of a mantra or a mission that we call it. And it took a little while for us to kind of get it together. But it's really a verse that's very familiar to many of you. It's Micah 6:8. And I want to talk about Micah 6:8 for a minute. It says, "He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." This is our template for how we live our life. This should be our template for how we engage on this topic of sanctity of life. As I said before, I believe that this is a justice issue. Kirsten, my wife, and I, we're involved with a lot of issues. We support some organizations that combat sex trafficking around the world. We are involved with this issue, of course. We've donated ultrasounds to different clinics, different centers around the country. We've done different events through our foundation for those that are in poverty or things like education. We've done all those things because we believe that this is really a justice issue. I have a friend who calls it a seamless garment of justice, and that God loves justice. Justice is simply punishing those who deserve punishment and protecting those who deserve protection. It's protecting the innocent, but it's punishing the wrongdoer. Whether it's criminal justice form, whether there's law enforcement, whatever it is, this is an issue of justice, and we should get upset when things are unjust. Secondly, love, kindness, and mercy in that verse. I talked about it a little bit before, but the biggest issue I believe that we have in this debate is we lack a lot of kindness. We lack a lot of kindness. We don't really know how to talk to each other. And I think part of that is because of these little phones that we have. We're not used to engaging with one another. We'd rather text or tweet at somebody. But we've lost the idea of being kind. Just be kind. Stick to truth. Always stick to truth. But give truth in love. That's what God would tell us to do. 4 of 10 women who have had abortions attend a church. It's not something that just happens out there, ladies and gentlemen, it happens in here. They're sitting beside you. The way you talk about people who have had these procedures is being heard by those on your church pews. Many people are living in guilt. And they're closed off, and they need to be restored and forgiven so that they know their worth. This I believe is vitally important. Kindness. 2 days pass on average between the time a woman suspects she's pregnant and decides to have an abortion. These 48 hours are critical. How are we entering into the lives of women during these 48 hours? Lastly, walking humbly. Walk humbly with your God. We are all hypocrites to some extent. Can I get an amen? We are. We say things and we do the opposite. At least I do. My wife would tell you that if she was standing right here. We're all hypocrites to some extent, but that doesn't mean we ever lower the standard. The standards are the standards. And whether that is something in culture or something having to do with this issue, we keep the standard where it is and we strive to get there knowing we fall short beside the grace of God and the Spirit. Humility is how we enter into any discussion, any contentious issue. Understanding that we need God's help for wisdom in how to engage, and wisdom in how to walk our lives, and wisdom in how to continue to make a difference. Lastly, I just want to give you some action items. So as a football player, I'm like, okay, I go into a meeting. We have meetings every day in football. You know, we come in the morning, and some of y'all think we just play on Sundays, right? I know, you just turn on and be like, man, how'd they put that together? We go to work like everybody else. Literally every day, we have one day off, which is Tuesday. And Tuesday is the day when, you know, daddy's home and, you know, I make blueberry pancakes and do all that type of stuff. So Tuesday is kind of our weekend in the NFL. But during the week, we get in at about 7:30 in the morning. We get done about 5 or so. I get home about 6. But we have meetings for much of the day. And in those meetings, we talk about the plays, if it's first down, second down, third down. On Wednesday, it's first and second down. Wednesday, you know you're going to hit each other a lot, first and second down. Then Thursday is third downs, a lot more passing game. But my point is we prepare, and then we execute the game plan when we go on the field in practice. If you just prepare and you never execute the game plan, you're not a player. You may as well be a spectator. You may as well be a fan. But if you prepare and you learn the plays and then you execute the game plan, then you're doing what you're called to do. What's the point, Benjamin? Well, the point is that some of you need to get off the sidelines. Some of you, whether it is a financial gift, whether it is donating your time, maybe you have an expertise, maybe you're a great counselor, maybe like the young lady who was here before praying, oh my gosh, I knew I was back in the South. When she was praying, I was like, I told her, I said, I'm not in Boston anymore. I'm back home. But that is an excellent example of using your gifts. Not that we all have to pray like that, but some of us are prayer warriors. Some of us have office space, like the gentleman that was here before, that he donated. Some of us have, you name it, whatever the expertise is, some of you have a voice, you can speak. You can sing. You have a great mind. You own a business. Some of you in here are young. You're in school. But you need to be a part of it too, because there are ideas that are going around in your schools that are not true. You need to serve in whatever capacity that you can. Don't just get in the huddle and learn the plays and eat the food and hang out and smile and network, but then leave here and leave times like this and don't execute the play. In football, we call that just somebody just trying to get a free meal. They're just collecting a check. Get in the game, because we need everybody. To make abortion unthinkable in this country is going to take everybody. I'm reminded of a story that I heard a few years ago, actually last year, about a husband and wife in Virginia, in Radford, Virginia. And maybe you heard this story, but they made a big poster and they went on Facebook. They made a video on Facebook, and on the poster it said, "Don't kill your child, we will adopt your baby." Now that, you may think that's extreme, and hey, we got 7, we'll take 8. Won't know the difference. But what they did was they put their money where their mouth was. They got off the sidelines into the game, made a sign, and it went viral. And the great thing is that they actually had an adoption lined up because of this gesture that they made. But what eventually happened was they didn't adopt the baby because the mom ended up keeping it. Their courageous stand gave that mom the courage to fight for her baby's life. They later adopted a child from Bulgaria, so they got their adoption. But what an example of getting off the sidelines. You know, it's easy to sit there and watch. You know, I love the news. You know, I flip back. I don't even watch sports really. Is that weird? But I'm like, I know sports. I don't want to watch sports. But I'll watch the news all the time, and you see the debates back and forth. It's easy to sit there and watch a great debate on whatever the issue is. It's another thing to get your hands dirty. So whatever it may be, you know, we're here to support Women's Resource Center, support them financially, support them with your time, with your efforts. They're on the ground doing this. But in your own way, we can all get in the fight. Your legacy. I played 16 years in the National Football League and just finished playing those 16 years, and the time went by really, really fast. And you think about, in your own lifetime, what legacy you want to leave. When you leave this earth, or when you leave your occupation, your current occupation, what do you want people to say about you? I thought about that a lot throughout my career. As you're sitting there, you're thinking about, if I were to leave my job and retire, what would people say about me? Would they say, man, she was a great nurse. She really knew how to put in an IV. That's good. When I get IVs, I like for you to know how to put in an IV. Would they say, man, that guy was an incredible lawyer, an incredible accountant. He always got my taxes right, always. Would they say that kid, you know, was really good at math? Man, those algebra problems, he kicked their butt. All that stuff is good, but for most of us, and at least for me, I wanted my legacy to be about how I affected change. I wanted my legacy to be about how I help people. I think back to another verse in the book of Jeremiah that talks about God being a God of loving kindness, of justice, and of righteousness. I want to be known for those things. Yeah, I want to be known for playing great football, because that's what he gave me to do. But when we think about our legacies, what do you want people to remember that you did? Do you want them to remember that you were a voice for the voiceless? Do you want them to remember that you did what it took to save the vulnerable? Do you want people to remember that you cared about whole families, mothers, fathers, children, sisters, brothers? Do you want people to remember that you gave something that was uncomfortable to give? Whether it was your time, your talents, or your treasure for something that was bigger than you. We all have an opportunity to give and to leave a legacy. Lastly, faces of courage. When I saw my face on there on the website, I was kind of like taken aback. Like, man, who's that handsome guy? So thank you for putting that great picture up there. I had to show my wife, babe, look at this. They got my picture on the website, babe. I see a lot of faces of courage right now. I do. Behind me, when they were showing the different faces, different people, and the quotes and everything, it's inspiring. It really is. Faces of courage. What is courage? We heard the definition earlier what courage was, but courage is simply, it's not that you're not scared, but it's that you're willing to do what it takes and you're willing to follow the course in the face of adversity and possibly in the face of pain and possibly in the face of death. I mean, we're reminded about courage from people like Esther for such a time as this, right? By going to the king when she shouldn't have went to the king to save her people. She did what was crazy for her to do. She was fearful, didn't do it immediately, but she ended up doing it because of her courage. We think about a guy like William Wilberforce. Who was William Wilberforce? He's the guy who helped abolish slavery in England in the 1800s. He worked his entire life, and when the bill passed to abolish it, he died 3 days later. He thought it would never happen, but he was courageous in ending an injustice. We think about a guy who actually marched here in places like Selma, Montgomery, Martin Luther King Jr., guy born in Atlanta, Georgia, a guy who had death threats, a guy who continued to hold the mantle and carry the torch and fight and fight and fight and go to jail and face certain death and all those sorts of things because he was fighting to end injustice because he knew it wasn't right. What I see are people that are courageous. It's not popular to do what you're doing. It might be in here. It might be a little more popular in some areas of the country than others. But it's not popular. It takes courage. It takes courage to say things that are kind of countercultural. It takes courage when you're going somewhere to say, where are you going? Well, I'm going to a banquet where they're going to talk about the sanctity of life and saving children from abortion. From what? It takes courage as a young boy or a young girl, a young man or woman on your team to stand up for what you know is right. That takes courage. But as you think about your legacy, as you think about what people want to know you for, continue to be people of courage. You know, it really is an honor to speak to you. And like I said before, we're living in Boston, Massachusetts now, and it's cold up there still. I don't think, so my kids are like, so when is spring coming? Because we were in New Orleans the year before. I said, you know, I'll call him, but he's not picking up. Spring is not picking up anytime soon. So it is always a warm welcome, and great for me to be back down here. I went to University of Georgia. Go Dogs. Roll Tide. If you got that on tape, send it to my man Mark Ingram and Roma Harper. They say that all the time. I'm so tired of rolling tide. What is the tide and how does it roll? What does that even mean? And why do you have an elephant? What's up with the elephant? I mean, seriously? An elephant? I've been to Alabama, I don't know how many times, driven back and forth on I-10, I ain't never seen no elephant. I'm trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. And nobody can tell me about the elephant. Auburn, give y'all a shout out too. Yeah. I'm not as jealous of you all as I am Alabama though, so. But keep fighting the good fight. Finish the race and keep the faith. Keep doing what you're doing. God bless you.